Well, welcome to Broker Rehab. I'm Courtney Twist. I've got my partner in crime, Jeff Sutherland, here with me, coming at you from Arizona. And we are so excited today to have Brian Domingos on, longtime broker in the Central Valley of California. We were just discussing, a broker since 2009. He's seen a lot of changes in this market. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. I believe you have like right around 30 agents or so in your brokerage.
We have about half of that. We're about 15, 16. Yeah.
15 agents in his brokerage. And today I've asked Brian to join us in a conversation about the things that we would never do again if we were starting our own brokerage or our own team. So I think this is going to be a lively and fun discussion. Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit more about you and your background.
Sure. So I got licensed in 2003. I was 21. I worked for a Century 21 franchise here in Fresno, and then detoured for a little while and worked in commercial entitlement consulting for a company that would be hired by developers to get their projects through the entitlement process. So we would take raw land, we would negotiate with neighbors and kind of tell the story of what the project would be to get support. Then we would go to planning commissions and local city councils to lobby them on behalf of the developer to get projects approved. So that was a very interesting kind of detour out of residential sales for a while, and allowed me to kind of really understand the connection between politics and land use locally, and how cities get built and developments get made, and how important those relationships are with elected and appointed officials. So I did that for 5 years, and then missed the real estate side, the sales. I missed working for myself. I missed having an opportunity to try to build something. I kind of always envisioned early on, like someday I would walk into a lobby and there would be my logo of my own company behind this wooden reception desk. And that never went away, that feeling of wanting to try that and kind of roll the dice on myself and see how that would work. So I did. I got my broker's license in 2009, still worked in development consulting for a while. Actually did some work with the Farm Bureau for a while, as well as I was kind of getting back into the residential side. And then, was back full-fledged, really not with a huge vision of what the brokerage would look like. I don't know that I took a lot of the time that I would now to kind of think through a lot of that. So you're like, you build your own clientele, and you're working on you're building an engine in an airplane that's in the air, right? So very little prep work, got a logo, got a couple of signs, got a cell phone number, and then just kind of went to work. And that was, 2009. So it's been a while, right? And I really always just kind of thought that I would focus on my own sales and my own team and my own clients and my own kind of world with my own operations people that would support me. And then we started with an assistant, and which was the hardest hire for me because I didn't think I could afford it, right? I thought, gosh, I don't know that I can afford to hire an assistant and kind of share my commissions. And I just gotten married at the time, and I just thought, I don't know if I can do this. So you have kind of like I started with this fear of the unknown. Like, what did I sign up for? What are my costs? Like, what's this budget going to look like? Can I afford to, pay my bills? And so the one assistant, we started with systems. We can get into this later. I'm sure you have questions about what I think is important looking back now, all of the things I didn't know and had to learn on my own. But we started implementing systems. For example, like if I was going to maintain my own business, what did that look like? How often was I going to touch my sphere? What was my relationship going to be with them once we closed a transaction? How was that going to be managed? Who was responsible for all that? And then, along the way, I just started picking up agents that I had worked with who said, hey, I'd like to work with you. Can we meet about joining your brokerage? And, grew kind of without a plan I was never a recruiter. I was never good at that. I never took the time to call agents to come over. So we kind of just grew based on word of mouth, people that I'd worked with at Century 21. I have a few of those who have come over now at different stages in their career 20 years later, which is fun. And, we've diversified into other things too, property management, pool maintenance, cleaning, that kind of stuff. That's the quick version of the last 20 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I heard you say something that's definitely touching on the topic that we're talking about, that you grew basically without a vision early
Mhm.
on. And I think that's something that's very common for us brokers and team leads is exactly what you said, right? We're getting so busy, so now we need some support. And how do we just grow our own business versus what do we really want this to look like 5 years from now? And how do we get a consistency with all of these people that are now working with us? And
Yeah.
it's a tough one.
It's chaotic, and I feel like when you're exploring the idea of creating a brokerage or a team, you really owe it to yourself and your future team members to think about, like, what are you going to do? What's the day to day look like for you? If producing is important to you and something that you need to for your bottom line to produce on your own, and you're going to be available to your clients more than you're going to be available to those that may need you, then you need to think about the type of agent that you're recruiting. Because if you're building a team of new people, and the training in our industry has drastically changed since I started. When I started in 2003, you pulled up to a brick and mortar with a tie on. You sat in a room with somebody that was 35 years older than you, who walked you through a contract, taught you how to measure a house, told you if your appointment's at 6, you sit around the corner at 5:55 and you pull up right at that time and make sure you're knocking at the time. I mean, that was the training that we were exposed to. And you sat and you read contract by contract, line by line. And things are different now. Technology's changed how we train. Brokerage's models have changed how we train. So I think really understanding, if you think about, I'm going to start this team or this brokerage, like, what's your ideal agent avatar, right? We talk about that with our clients. Who are we targeting when we want to service our real estate clients? And so the same, I think, would apply as a leader of a brokerage. These people or a team are coming to you with different needs, and you have to understand if you're able and equipped and ready to meet their needs. And if not, then whose needs are you ready to meet while you're maintaining your own business, if that's the model you're going to do. If you're not, if you're fully dedicated to sitting in the big office in the corner, and checking in on a regular basis while other people work to make money for you, then what does that structure need to look like? And I think that fundamental, fork in the road really has to be explored before you're experimenting. And maybe you won't have it all figured out, because we don't know until we kind of start getting into the trenches and exploring how it's going to work. But I think if an agent asks you, what's my training going to look like? Who's going to do it? If I'm writing a contract at 6 at night and I'm stuck, who do I call? Those are questions you owe yourself and the agents that are going to be working with you the answer to.
Definitely. I mean, Jeff, what's your thought on that? Because you kind of came at this different than I feel like Brian, and my experiences are really similar. I grew in a very similar manner to Brian and didn't figure out vision or any of that till I started getting my first real estate coach, which was like years later. Whereas you, Jeff, like got your broker's license and were like full steam ahead in the throes of it early on with managing a bunch of people versus it all being about more your production.
Yeah, when we went, I basically spent most of my career building people and building companies. So when I started my own company in Chandler, my goal was to scale as quickly as possible. So I think I hit some flatlined areas. Like when we hit agent 75, around that agent count, we flatlined for about 6 months until we had another breakthrough. But when I look back at what I would have done differently, it's clear to me I would have had a different split. We did a flat fee, which was very, very affordable in Phoenix at that time. So we brought in a lot of people, and they were quality people. We vetted everybody, and we had excellent production per agent. Actually, the number one in Phoenix in 2013 and 14. But because of the lack of a split, my profitability really suffered. So I found myself working endless hours and not taking home the amount of money I really wanted to take home. So it was kind of unfulfilling in that regard. And I wish I would have started with a different fee structure at the very beginning and actually brought in less people and focused more on, retention and quality versus numbers. Because like in the Phoenix market, it's difficult to compete on numbers, because you're amongst some giants of companies that have 5,000, 6,000 agents. So you're constantly competing against them in technology, right? And when you're a new broker, you can't. You don't have the war chest of cash. You don't have the resources or the strategic alliances. So those are some challenges, if you want to grow, those are challenges at the beginning, and from my experience.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I think one of the things I didn't realize early on is whatever my value proposition was going to be as a broker was going to cost me money. And you have to back into that number to know how, what do your splits look like and how do you justify them? And is that something that you can communicate that's objective and consistent to the same person? Or are you saying, it looks like you sold a lot of real estate last year. I'm going to start you at this really high split and hope that you continue. And then we have a major market change like we've had. And so those numbers don't work. So the budget piece of being a brokerage now, where the expectation of value is high and the expectation that the split is also going to be high, puts the broker in an interesting, position in terms of how to pay for it all, right? So I think, just like I tell my agents, you have to know your value proposition. If you're sitting at somebody's dining room table and they've given you an opportunity to sell their property, you have to be able to explain to them why you're the best choice, which means you have to know what you're good at and what value you bring to the transaction, right? That's beyond putting a sign in the ground and putting it in the MLS. So same for us, I think, team leaders and brokers, we have to be able to articulate to the people that want to hang their license with us what our value is and what it costs. And that for me is later in my career where I've started to really been able to say that I can articulate this is what you're going to get here. And we have to have a conversation about if we're a good fit or not. And my challenge to brokers and team leads would be, don't give away your value, right? I mean, if you're investing time and resources into training somebody and help them find their why and develop a passion and be able to understand a contract and try to implement boundaries and have good service and, manage all of the things that we have to manage and be a TikTok star and be able to be on, all of those things, quantify your time and make sure that it's worth it for you.
I so agree. Although sometimes, I mean, over years, we've all been brokers for a long time, your value changes or your value proposition changes. And sometimes your splits have to change accordingly. And that is a tough conversation when you have to either change splits or fees. But I feel like it's almost inevitable at some point in the road. I don't know. It's hard to nail that down in the early days because so much is changing and tech is changing and all the things.
And I think one of the things I've struggled with is letting the company evolve when it's supposed to versus holding on to kind of old things that we're comfortable with or routine or policies or splits that made sense at one time and maybe don't now, and confronting those, having those conversations with your team, whether it be your admin people or your agents, is hard. The timing of that sometimes is off.
Could I ask, Brian, is it difficult for you? You have 15 agents. First question would be, do you have a standard that you look for when you bring people in, certain production levels? And second question is, how do you do that in terms of balancing your own production and then leading the company? Is that sometimes difficult, or how is that for you?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think I look for work ethic, ability to communicate, prior sales experience. Like one of my best agents used to sell copiers for 20 years. She's incredible. Her presentation is top notch. Her knowledge about her products, she takes very seriously because that's how she competed and won before with a low margin business like copy machines, which I didn't know anything about. And so production's important, but sometimes people with a lot of production come with a lot of baggage. So I come with a lot of baggage. If I was an agent out there looking, I know that I'd be walking into the big list too. So I get that. We get, comfortable with our process. So to me, it's not, I don't really have a set standard. It's more of a conversation. What I learned probably too late was that I needed to be able to establish value and make sure that there were people in place to help the agents when I'm busy, because there's times that I'm not here very often. I'm here every day, but some days, like tomorrow, I'm out of the office most of the day, whether that be meetings with local associations or doing a walkthrough or showing property. And so if somebody has a question at 2:00 tomorrow, I won't be in my office for them to answer that too. So we put a training calendar was really important for us so that we could consistently communicate to people, this is when you're going to be trained. This is what availability looks like. If I'm not here, I have one of the best operations people in the business who works for me full time and sits in my office and helps the brokerage work when we have technical questions about contracts. She's incredible. What form do I use? How do I fill it out? All those things she's available for when I'm not. And every Wednesday we have a team meeting that we help people learn not only the technical, we have a separate technical training, but help develop the sales piece. We talk about the funnel. How are you getting people in it? I ask that all the time, but the ones you know and the ones you don't, what's your strategy for both? How are they going to find you out of 4,000 people in our Fresno metro area? And then when they find you, what are you going to say to them? Because the statistics say you probably won't capture that lead unless you do it certain things, right? So we have focused conversations around things that I think are important. We talk about time blocking. We talk about what is your job as an agent? It really comes down to talking to people, showing property, making appointments, and follow up, right? And if you want to record some of that on Instagram and social media, great, go for it. But you have to know the fundamentals. And if someone calls you and says, "Do I sign this liquidated damages paragraph on this contract as I'm driving down the freeway and doing it on my phone? Like, what does it mean?" And you say, "I don't know," then you start to erode the value that you bring to the transaction. So I want my agents, when somebody calls them and says, "Hey, in theory, like I'm trying to explore what this means, these contingencies, you said they have 17 days. What does that look like? What are those off ramps for me? And how does that affect me while I continue to pay the mortgage and maintain the property?" I want them to be able to answer those questions. So we talk about that. I don't even know if that remotely answered your question. So I built the team that supports my personal production. And then I have another admin too that's in the office, so helping order signs and making sure MLS statuses are changed. So it's, to your point though, that there's overhead associated with those things. And I have some benefits because I have other companies that can share in the cost of that. But that's how I structure it.
And you made one point I just want to follow up on. You said some people come at a big cost, right? And there's a lot more with high producers. And that is absolutely facts, right? Because in some companies you have a capping system, right? And when you have a capping system, you're only getting X amount of money from that prima donna, that agent that wants your staff all the time. And sometimes they're toxic to the culture.
Yeah.
So, I bet over the years you've probably had to make some difficult calls, because at the end of the day, you have to get a return, off the time you're putting into these agents, and you want them to be in culture. And if they're out of culture, you really have to kind of question that, I think.
Culture is really important. And, I have always been an independent worker that's never really worried about that part. And that, for me personally, the culture is important. You want to be able to enjoy the people you work with, and then you want to be able to have fun with them. And this is a tough business. You want support when you need it. You want to be able to say, like, "Gosh, I'm really struggling with this, and what would you do?" That stuff's always been really important to me. But I had to kind of learn through a couple agents, say, like, "Are we ever going to do anything fun? Are you going to ever do like an ice cream social, or can we do a beer tasting one night?" Or what was one that they wanted to do, a vision board night where we brought magazines and cut out and had some wine. Like, that stuff didn't even dawn on me initially. And that culture is important in a business that's hard. Like, culture is important anywhere, but I had to stop and go, "Oh gosh, how do we connect as humans in a way that we feel like we have a true support system, and we actually get to learn and know something about these people that we work with in a different, more personal way?" So, it's funny, you get the title and the power and the ability to be at the top, but doesn't mean that you're equipped to know all of the right ingredients for what a perfect culture looks like, or rules, or policies and procedures, or how do I get my check, or when does my stuff get uploaded to your review system, right? Like, we have to learn those things, and sometimes we have to hope that there's some grace that comes along with those of us on the journey to help us be better.
That's basically what prompted us to create Broker Rehab. Is I know for years I was looking for resources for brokers, specifically, like, where can we go? Who can we talk to that is not competition necessarily? Like, where can we go that's like somewhere you can get vulnerable or hear from others in other markets at what they're doing and what's working or not working? Because there's kind of a lack of resources, I think, in our industry for leaders specifically. There's a lot about production and for resources, but where do we go when we don't know the answer? Which happens.
It's funny. I just re-engaged a coach. I had a coach for a long, long time that looked at structure, and she was in Florida. I flew her out to the Brokerage, and we did 2 weeks of extensive deep dives into our everything. And we would meet every week electronically, and I could let that go for a while. And I just re-engaged a new coach, because I'm at the point now where the collaboration piece and the exploring, like, what could this look like? And you have all this experience having these conversations nationally. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because there's nobody in this building that I can go walk to and ask, "What do you think about this? Like, what is this, a good idea or a bad idea?" So you're right. I mean, there's not a lot of structure around where we go to talk. And I think now more than ever, it's so important in this industry as there's been so many changes in an interesting market, so much happening with mergers and acquisitions. We need some outlet to be able to compare notes and chat and support each other, because it's interesting right now.
I mean, I think that kind of brings up, or maybe this is just my opinion, but you don't know when you go in that it can kind of be lonely when you're that leader and you don't have someone, like you said, to bounce it off of or to be vulnerable with. You're like, oh, leaders are lonely. They can be sometimes.
No, absolutely. Yeah, very much. And what do you do? Like, how do you even, I think it's good, to have somebody that intentionally makes you stop for a minute and just say, hey, how are we doing? Is your life consistent with the intentions that you've set out and the dreams and goals and desires? Are we still doing the right things that are going to support the life that you want? Right? Because if we don't take the time to evaluate what we're working on such a regular basis, and we're pouring our money and time and soul and life into it, and what if it's not the right path? Like, what if we're being nudged a different direction, or we're being told by the universe or whoever to slow down and say, hey, why don't you explore this a little bit? Or that connection that you had with this person felt really good, even though that's not in your normal wheelhouse. Like, why don't you sit with that for a minute and see what that could look like for you? And I think a lot of us, maybe I'll just, I'll speak for myself, kind of get tunnel vision about this end place we think we're going, without understanding that the journey is kind of the most important piece. And take a detour if you need to take a detour. Go have an exploratory conversation with somebody. Go partner with somebody in a new way that makes you feel uncomfortable. I mean, that's how we grow. And when we've reached a certain point with production, I think we're exploring other ways to feel more effective and look at how do we have a bigger impact, or how do we give back in a way that we want to give back, right? I mean, I think those are all really good things to wrestle with.
So I don't know how people do this business without a coach. So I applaud you on doing that. I think that we're at a point in the industry now where we've had a lot of growth in 2020, 21. Everybody could do well, right? You could get hit by a deal. And now it's like, you got to work hard, right? This is a hard market. And I see a lot of agents out there suffering. We actually started a coaching company, and Courtney's one of our coaches. And it's called Growth Yard Coaching, because we feel like there's a need for a new vibe, a new approach to coaching. And our coach for our staff that started the company is somebody that used to work with Tony Robbins. So I do believe a rising tide lifts all ships. You have to collaborate. Without collaboration, you're isolated in this business. And like any other business, it's like we need ideas, we need collaboration, somebody to challenge us. And I think as an indie broker, when I was there, I wanted that. I yearned for that, right? And the deeper conversation, like you're talking about, Brian, let's peel back the onion, and find out, am I really happy with this, and what's really going on? And I think we just go through the motions, sometimes for years, without anybody really asking us these really tough questions. It's the missing conversation is the worst conversation you can have.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, just from my own experience of being able to give, I earlier this year I had pneumonia for a couple of months, and that really took me out of my normal fast-paced life, where I didn't have a choice, but I had to lay in bed and try to recover, because I just physically didn't have the ability to do what I thought. And it was really kind of the identity crisis I always needed, because all of my identity was stripped from me. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't service my clients like I normally did. I couldn't answer the calls that I wanted to answer. I couldn't physically be the places I needed to be. I couldn't be out with my kids and watch her get, all of that I took for granted at a, relatively young age, very, physically try to take good care of myself. And I had to really sit alone in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock when I was awake, trying to breathe and think about, what am I doing? Like, what does this look like? Am I on all those things I brought up earlier that I got to ask myself, because I was forced to slow down and get better physically, which allowed my mind the time to really process, like, what does this look like? Are we on the right track? Are we making the impact we want to make? And, it went from total fear, which is why I think I can bet on myself, because my track record's good at being successful, because within a 2-week period was like, I'm going to go bankrupt. I'm going to lose all my clients. How am I going to pay for, like, such a drastic place in my mind that I went. And guess what? My team was great. All my clients were wanting me to get better and take care of themselves. All of the escrows closed. All of the garage door remotes got found. The final walkthroughs got, nothing, the world didn't end. So it was a good lesson for me that I'm not, I'm not the axis or the center of the earth, and it's okay to take care of yourself and have a good team, and everything worked out fine. But the the kind of final blessing for me was I got to really think about like what do I want to do with my time, and which pieces do I really like. I think the other thing about leadership and brokerages and team leads is we wear so many hats that we just assume are all of our responsibility, and so we wear the weight of that, all of those things, keeping agents happy and productive and worrying about their income and making sure they have value, and then making sure we have value, and that all the things we do, all the hats we wear. And I think it's important to audit those things and say, like, what brought you joy today, Jeff? Of all the 15 things that you just listed that you did, which made the hair on your arm raise, or which did you think, gosh, I really like this, or which pieces did you really hate that you thought, gosh, if I have to do this every single day, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, right? And those, just like those audits of ourselves and all of the things we pour our energy into, and then being able to make decisions with how we felt based on that. I think that for leaders, that's really important, and we're usually too busy to do it.
Yeah. It's the rich dad, poor dad quadrant of like what you're good at and what you also enjoy, and to try to outsource some of the areas that you're not so strong in, or find people to fill those blind spots to help you.
Right. Because some of the stuff that we don't like takes a toll, right? And then we have these layers that we're trying to sort through when we feel the burden, that maybe we could delegate that piece, or maybe we could restructure how we do that so that it doesn't feel like such a burden. And I think those are all good things to think about.
Well, what have we missed for someone that's listening to this that says, I want my name or whatever on the sign, I want to do my own thing? What is one other thing that you would say, I would never do that again, or I wish I had thought of this?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think, well, one of the things that the industry's changed from when I became a broker to what it is now. So I think that what you could miss is the future of the industry and where we're going. And really, what's your passion? Is your passion leading people and not producing and growing teams and watching people's careers flourish? Because there's a really great part of what we do when we watch somebody that walks through the door who had no idea they'd be successful, and we watched and helped coach them and help them believe themselves and develop systems and routines that made them a lot of money. Because this industry, they can change your life, right? And then they provide vacations and opportunities to their family that they wouldn't have, and because they worked hard and they have something to show for that. And I think that's an incredibly rewarding seat that we have in the front row, watching that transformation happen for people. But the downside is you have to know the cost, you have to know the value, you have to know how you're going to share your time, you have to know how many agents you need to be able to produce the type of income that you need to keep your doors open, right? So I think the math is important, and I didn't take the time to plan at the beginning because I didn't even really know what I was getting into. So I think the other thing critically, and maybe you guys agree or not, but I think the real estate industry is at a massive fork in the road right now. I think major changes are coming. I've never in my years, like I said, 2003, seen government entities coming after us, suing us, losses and lawsuits being investigated by the Department of Justice, us needing to articulate our value, us having such a low viewpoint from the consumer standpoint, where they're feeling like we're taking money from them through our commissions without understanding the value that we bring. We're at a critical place, in my opinion, and really need to fight as an industry to maintain the professionalism that those of us that do this on a high level and provide a good service. We need to protect that. We need the consumer to know that they're in the right hands, but that's going to require that the industry itself do some exploration of how we train people and how we engage them and how we prepare them to go out and help people. We have work to do. I think we need to be honest with ourselves about the work that we need to do to get the respect that we deserve from the consumer, and how we treat each other and how we work together, and what we know. And I think there's a huge opportunity for those of you that are in the field of teaching and training and helping people benefit from that, because things are different. And it's time to fix it, or at least start talking about it in a more real way. And maybe that's happening in a lot more areas than I'm seeing. But that's my kind of personal asterisk, is it's time to get serious about how our industry and the people that are in it.
Trying to elevate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we've gone through more change in the last year than I've probably ever seen in my career. Half of me, Brian, says, boy, I'm glad my runway's short. And because I don't know if I want to be in that new world. And then the other half of me says, man, this is exciting.
Yeah, because
So
there's opportunity to, like, exactly like you guys were talking about, creating pathways for leaders to have these kind of conversations in a safe space where we say, how do we do it together? What does it look like? What is training somebody in this world, in this environment with these changes? What does it look like? How do we make sure that they're successful, and what do they need from us? And we don't collaboratively have a lot of opportunity around that. I don't think so. And who's really in charge of the industry? Is it the national associations or the trade groups, or is it brokers getting together like this and just having a conversation about how do we give back to an industry that deserves to have competent people in it? I don't know. You guys will figure out the answers for us, I'm sure, and let me know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think currently it mostly comes from the broker level, because we all have new agents and they come at it with nothing after they take their test. Like, it's actually, at least in California, maybe Arizona's different, Jeff. Excuse me. But seeing my daughter got licensed, and so I looked at, when she was taking her courses, and I'm like, oh, this is actually not very helpful. And there was nothing on the contract.
Yeah.
Like, she took her test, got licensed as a realtor, but still really had no clue how to read contract. And that was very eye-opening. To reiterate my feelings on that, I think our barrier to entry is too low for our industry, and that I'm okay with weeding out some of the realtors that are currently licensed in our market that don't sell any real estate, and yet they have the title. I think we need it. I think it's time. It's time to make it more difficult, like a fiduciary or something along those lines. And like you said, provide better training for our agents as a whole, collectively, for our industry. I think it's crucial.
When 70% of the industry has no transactions in the first quarter of the year, you got a problem. Even if the market's bad, it dumbs down the entire industry. So I'm 100% behind what you're saying, Courtney.
Yeah. Yeah. It negatively impacts those of us that are transacting and are investing in our careers and are growing and are doing all the right things and learning our content, right? I mean, there's been years that I've made more money than some of my friends that are attorneys and accountants. But when you rank our professions, I would always be at the bottom, right? Even though I'm just as educated, I have a master's degree, I have business, like, you're fighting for, well, I'm like worth being respected as a real estate broker who helps people and provides a high level of service. Like, that's worth respect, right? But like, there's this barrier that we've created, on my opinion, on our own, that we have to overcome, because there's so many people that don't deserve the title that have it.
And which is why people equate us to used car salesmen sometimes, which we want to get away from.
Yeah, absolutely. There's value. And I think that, that's worth fighting for. That's worth being able to articulate. That's worth the consumer feeling confident in using us when they need somebody.
Well, Brian, I really appreciate you, and I thank you for coming on today and sharing your wisdom. I have admired you and your career for so long. I don't want to sound like a stalker, but like,
That's too bad.
a really long time.
You've done great things too. It's been fun to watch you.
It's fun for us to grow together and change with the times, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went to Yosemite High, so I always would pay attention to what you Mariposa people were doing up there. So, yeah.
Trying to keep you in sports. That's what we're doing. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, where can people find you, Brian? What's the best way to reach you if they want to reach out after?
Oh, that's a good question. That would require that I knew what my social handles are. But Brian, if you search my name, Brian Domingos, my cell phone, people are always welcome to call or text me, or I am on Instagram, Brian Domingos Broker, I think, and Facebook as well. So happy to connect with anyone that wants to chat.
Well, we appreciate it. And Jeff, per usual, Brian doesn't know this, but at the end of each of our episodes, we leave with what we call our recharge room, where we give a little bit of zen and recharge our batteries. And Jeff does that for us with his pastor background. He's pretty good at it.
Awesome.
So today I'm going to put a little bit of technology into the mix, right? I love deeper conversations, right? I want to be able to have good conversations with people. You know how we've always been taught. You sit down with a coffee with somebody and you ask the pleasantries, hey, how you doing? Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? What if we actually used AI? Can you believe this, Courtney? I want to talk about AI and how it's going to make our life better.
I'm proud of you, Jeff.
Yeah, let's go. So you get on Notebook LM, right? Ryan, do you know what that is?
I don't.
Oh, you're going to get taught something today, brother. So Notebook LM is one of the little apps you get on your Google Suite. Just go over to the 9 dots, scroll down. Let's say I'm going to meet Courtney, and I don't really know much about Courtney. I'm going to go search, do a deep search on the internet on everything about Courtney. I'm going to bring those websites into Notebook LM. And I'm going to say, tell me all the accomplishments that Courtney has had in her life, things that are really important to her. I'm going to have a list of things right there that I can internalize. So when I sit down with people, whether I'm interviewing them for a position or just want to, form a better relationship, I'm going to have provocative, thought-provoking questions to ask that person. And they're going to know, oh my goodness, Jeff took the time, right, to get to know me, before this even happened. That is game-changing stuff. Both Courtney and I have NLP practitioner licenses. We talk about building rapport. That is a major way to build rapport. Things are changing and people are using these things than just the old-fashioned things, like notes, So this is the kind of stuff that's been helping me. And I do think it gives you a recharge, right? Because there's nothing better than connecting with somebody at a deeper level. And now we have all these new tools that can help us do that. What do you think, Courtney?
I love it. I love it, Jeff. Good job. Good job. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Now that our batteries are recharged and we have all this advice out there for our new brokers and team leads, I think we can go off and lead our people, right? And
Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you guys. It was fun.
yeah, thanks, Brian. Appreciate you.
And you got it.